Hey Dreamers, I'm Joe Pardo, and today I am, of course, talking with the awesome Matt Borelli, who is sitting here across from me, my Robin to my Howard.
Woo!
And of course, I'm joined again here with the lovely Ava Grace, who just startled because I moved my hand a little bit. And we're of course broadcasting live on this Monday, and this episode goes out Tuesday tomorrow. But we're broadcasting live on Facebook Live. So if you're not following me on Facebook, you should be. It's facebook.com/Pardo Joe, and follow me so you can get get access to checking out these live feeds on Monday rather than just listening in on Tuesday. Speaking of Tuesday, my guest this week for the show for Dreamers Podcast is the awesome Guy Hutchinson, who runs the Drunk on Disney podcast with the hilarious Dana Snyder, who is best known for the voice of Master Shake from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, if you're familiar with that work. But he's done tons of other shows. And unfortunately, Aqua Teen Hunger Force just wrapped up, which is such a shame because it's such an awesome show. But yeah, so and he recently in the last 6 months or so put out his second book, something like that, but all about Sesame Place. Now, Matt and I grew up going to Sesame Place over here in wherever Pennsylvania, which is just north of Philadelphia. But it's a fascinating story, and he got unprecedented access to Sesame Place to go in and check out all the archives and the photos and all that stuff, and it's really, really awesome. In fact, I need to get a copy of it still. When we met up at the Pop Shop a couple probably about 2 months ago, he forgot to bring a copy of it. So I still got to get a copy of it. But he's a great guy. Super happy to call him a friend of mine, and I can't wait for you guys to check out the interview. I think it was snowing the time when we were recording or something to that effect. But yeah, anyway, Matt, how was your week last week?
It was good. I spent a lot of time with my niece, and she's always very entertaining. Trying to find new ways to keep her busy, keep her off the TV set, and
the TV
keep her
set.
engaged.
Do the kids even watch TV at this point? Isn't it all iPads and
well,
tablets?
Her mother took the tablet away, so
so a TV. So that's the downgrade. That's
Right.
It's like third world country at this point. You got to watch TV.
I can't just hide somewhere and watch SpongeBob. I actually have to go to a place where people can find me and try and pull me off the TV.
So for this week, a couple things happened. Ava turned 3 weeks old, so she's here. Back to on Wednesday, she'll be a whole month old already. This time, even though it seems to be going slow, the days just fly by. It's like everything's pushed and fast forward, but I'm slowed down in that fast forwardness because everything I do at this point is just in slow-mo, because I have to you were standing out the door this morning waiting to come in, and then I had to help take Melissa. I had to help Melissa with her and get some other things done in order for me to go out and just open the door for you. So it took way longer than it should have.
And I was waiting for an audience with the king,
or the queen, if you will.
Right, true.
So anyway, so a couple things I wanted to talk about this week on the pre-show, the Dreamers Podcast pre-show, as I'm calling. I don't know if anybody else is calling it, but to me, it's a pre-show for the interview that comes after the fact. I had a long conversation with somebody that got me kind of really fired up about, and it's funny that no pun intended, but all about the motivation, the fire that we have inside of us that makes us want to do things and do more of it, right? And get better at it. So for me, I got really fired up about what was being said to me, and I don't want to point out names or anything like that, but I mean, Matt, because I called you right after I left. And,
oh yeah.
And I think I didn't even realize that 7 minutes had gone by since you got on the phone and said hi. I said, how you doing? You're like, oh, I'm good. And then I went off for like 7 minutes.
I could hear the fire in your voice building up. Like I knew I was in for a tirade. You're pretty angry.
I was pretty angry. I was really, and you just keep using the word fired up because I want people to have the same drive and the same hustle and the same, like, I'm going to get this done and I'm going to actually do it and not just sit around and be like, oh, well, now 2 years have gone by and I still haven't completed it. And now I'm settling because I just have to get this thing done rather than getting it done right or getting it done to a level that we really should be getting things done. On a, well, not a level, but a, to a what's the word I'm looking for, Matt? See, this is why Matt's here, because Joe's vocabulary sometimes eludes him. So, and I'm talking in third person like a Ross Perot for anyone who still knows who that is. But you know what I mean? Like to a not a satisfactory level, but a exemplary example. Like
not sure where you're
excellent
going with
level, like to the next level. Can we say the next level? I don't know if that's descriptive enough. But doing it better than just doing an acceptable job. You're doing like an exceptional job.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
it. Yeah. Learning words with Joe. Phonics with Joe. If phonics is the right term, right? Phonics. I think it's phonics. Yeah. So
You're hooked on them.
Yeah. I need to be hooked on them. That's the problem. So I really, for me, I work to work more and I work to work harder and get more projects out. So like for me, I understand, like I have a clock right above my head and at some point the clock on this little girl is about to go off if I don't get her more comfortable. The clock is going to go out on me and I have so many projects, so many creative ideas and things I want to get done, but the problem is I don't have a team. So for me, it's like I have to work as hard as I possibly can to get those things out before the clock runs out and before I no longer am able to be on this earth and get those things done. Because there's more that I want to do than just the creative side. There's the, I don't know if the philanthropic,
Philanthropy?
Yeah, with the ick at the end. Yeah, I can't even say the word. There's a lot of charity stuff. There's a lot of good that I want to do in the world from the hard work that I've created. The stuff
Sure.
I've created. So it's more than just about me and creating and being recognized for my work, but more so being able to help other people because of the work that I do. That I think that makes more sense, right?
What is your time frame? Because you talk like you don't have a lot of time to get things done. I mean, is it just that you have so much stuff that you feel like, because you had the whole rest of your life, but
dude, life goes by fast. And honestly, as soon as she was born, life sped up a lot.
Well, sure.
But like I said, I'm living it in slow motion because everything takes that much longer to accomplish. So it's like doing things that I want to do as quickly as I would want to do them is not possible. But the days just seem to be flying by. Like seriously, I feel like sometimes I wake up and next thing I know, it's time to go to bed.
But you enjoy the process. You enjoy doing things. It's not so much, you're not looking at the end goal and all this is just kind of work leading up to it. You're actually benefiting from the work itself. So, it's work, but at the same time, it's fulfilling work. Is the impression I get.
Benjamin Mullen just said philanthropic. Philanthropic. Thank you, Benjamin Mullen, for that. You see, you learn something new every day. Philanthropic. Now, I'm going to be saying this to myself as I go to sleep, and I will be able to hopefully say the word. I'm going to say it slow, because at this point, everything I'm doing is slow. But it's all for the right reasons, right? And like you said, I am enjoying the process, and I'm enjoying this little girl that's in my arms right now. But the point is I'm not used to like I have two speeds, right? It's like fast or stop. Oh, and she's making a face. So for me, going slow is it's definitely a change, and it's a change not in philosophy, but it's a change in a lot of times the new, like, the old ways that we have of doing things isn't necessarily going to take us through the new experiences that we have. Sometimes we have to come up with newer and better ways to accomplish those tasks.
Oh, sure.
Right. So for right now, like, I'm trying my best to get things accomplished. Like, I've been getting things accomplished, but like I said, it's just not as much as much as I would like to be getting accomplished. And she's back to sleep. Good.
Well, it's not like you lack for organization. It's just, to me, it just seems like maybe you have, a lot on your plate. But like you said, you can't work at your usual 2 speeds. I mean, you've got, you're kind of going to work at Ava's speed at this point, and that's and on Ava's schedule.
She needs to speed up. she's to get her butt on like
on the
a
treadmill.
Car or something. Treadmill. Oh, I hate treadmills. Because treadmills keep you in the same place, right? You can run as hard as you want, but it doesn't mean you're going anywhere.
No, it seems like an analogy for most people's lives, and maybe that's why they need to
get more fire in their belly and more motivation to want to do things and stop talking about it and get up and actually start. Even like I always say, it goes back to, even if it's just a Google search, start somewhere, right?
Oh,
just
God, yeah.
Start with something. At least then you can start to do the research. It puts things in motion, or it can make you want to turn in a different direction than the direction that you're in, because you realize that it's not going to work. And you have to be willing to pivot.
It's like a domino effect. I mean, I find that if I look up something, I realize, oh, this wasn't as complicated as I thought it would be to get into, or hey, this is so interesting. Like, one link leads to another, and all of a sudden I'm not an expert on it, but I feel like I know enough that, I could actually go and pursue this, as opposed to, I heard somebody talk about it, it sounds kind of interesting, but, I have my own misconceptions about what's involved, and like, I could never, so you kind of blow it off, and, you lose out, you miss out.
Yeah, and I'm all about not missing out on much of anything. So and living it to the fullest, because like I said, I very well understand that there's a clock over my head, and I don't know when that is going to end. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and we just got back, me and you were out at Home Depot and had a very interesting experience. Now on the show, the last couple of weeks that we've talked, because obviously there was a couple weeks where I was off from talking live on Facebook Live here and doing the pre-show, but we like to talk about management styles and like how people can do better at what the job that they have and create better experiences for other people. Well, customer service is it's all about creating experiences, and I had a very odd experience over at a giant orange boxed retailer that I'm not going to name. But it's
Orange Julius.
Orange Julius. No, it's not Orange. No, not Orange Julius. It's the Depot one. Yes, the Depot. Casa de Depot. Casa Depot, I guess, or Depot Casa, if you will.
I gotcha.
So yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down. So what happened was, I had an interesting conversation the other night with my friend Mike about how his parents had just bought a new freezer out for their garage. And he pointed out that their old freezer was using about 8 times the electricity that the current one they just bought does. 8 times, because it was from the 90s. And he's like, don't you have a freezer out in your garage? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, well, if it's using like 8 times what the current one is, you're probably running around almost $400 a year running that freezer. And I was like, I don't even know how old the freezer is. I've had it, it's been in the house as long as I can remember. So it's easily been here since the 90s. So I was like, okay, and maybe even longer than that, like maybe even the early 90s. So I was like, that's interesting. So maybe it's contributing to why my electricity bill is always so darn high, which really sucks.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, you might even have to go back and take an inventory of, just where you can make some savings. Like, change out light bulbs for,
Well, we've done all those. We're all LED okay. At this point, man.
Gotcha.
And we were compact fluorescent before that, but...
Well, just, even other things, like, I tend to unplug a lot of things I don't use, because, like, even if something's, like, not turned on, like a TV set, I mean, it's inconvenient, but it is draining power, even if it's off, and enough of those things will add up over time.
Definitely. I think a lot of it's the air conditioner. Our air conditioner unit,
Sure.
how the whole house one, it doesn't blow very well through many of the vents. So I think at some point I'm going to have to get somebody in here with like a snake and then maybe tape up some of these joints and stuff like that. But and honestly, money savings is something that I do like to talk about Dreamers Podcast because money, dreams usually take a lot of money. As Walt Disney said, these dreams, it takes a lot of money to make these dreams come true. And a lot of times, instead of just looking at the sales aspect, I like to look at the savings aspect. How much can we save to make these dreams, to get money rather than, oh, well, we have to sell more things or we have to create more products or we have to do this or that. Like, we had to look at our lifestyles and see how we can save. So it hadn't even occurred to me that this freezer was using that much electricity. Or potentially, I have a meter. You can get like a little box that you can plug your electronics into and see how much it's using and how much it's going to cost you a year or a month and then a year to run. So I haven't even done it. But we happen to be at Home Depot and we walked past the section of all the appliances and everything. And I was like, I wonder if they got freezers here. So we went all the way to the very back of the store. It's like a dark little alley. And I was like, oh, look at that. I was like, oh, man, look at this. This much more. Now, we have a stand-up freezer. It's probably like 14, 15 cubic feet. They had a much smaller one. It was like 6.9 with a top like a top loaded one. So you would open it up from the top instead of from the side, like ours. Ours opens up like a normal refrigerator, and the power per year was $27 a year, and I was like, wow. Like if the one that I have, because the truth be known, we don't really use our freezer to its full potential out in the garage. But when you need it, you need it. Like when we have parties, we always end up with extra ice, or we end up with extra food, or we end up with, freezing stuff. And our freezer, it's big, but it's not big enough for like trays of food or bags of ice and stuff like that. So if in fact when Mike was doing his searches and he said that a lot of these old ones are using between $20 and $30 a month in electricity, and that might even be during the winter months when it's cold outside in the garage versus the summer months where it's not cold out, it's like 95 degrees out there. So I was like, hey, let's get this freezer. I was like, I'll figure out how to fit it in my little car. It's not huge, but it's big enough and it would serve its purpose. And it's only it's like $170. I was like, if I can sell mine for like $40 or so, now we're not talking about 170, we're talking about 130, and we're already going to save that just in the first like 6 months just from electricity usage. If mine is using that $400 or $500 a month in electricity, or a year in electricity, right? Because even the big one was like the 15 cubic feet was like $53 a year in electricity. So it's like, okay, well, if it's 6 times or 8 times that, I mean, that's where you're going to be getting big savings. So here's where the customer service thing comes in. So I had to go find somebody. I mean, we're being at the depot, you're always going to have to go find somebody because it's almost very rare that somebody just happens to be there to ask you if you need help. And if they do, it's usually when you don't need help. And then 5 seconds later, you need help. So I went, found somebody. It wasn't too hard. Was actually pretty okay with that. She goes and gets somebody else to try to get it because it wasn't out for me to just like throw it in a cart or on top of a cart or something like that. So, and she made us wait there we were there quite a while. And the reason is they have like, what did they say, like 6 or 10 of them in stock or something like that?
Well, she said they just got 3 in.
Oh, was it only 3? I thought 3 was at the other location, but I thought they had like 6 or 7 of them. Well, there.
Yeah. Now the store we were in, they had literally just received them, but they weren't, put out on the floor. They weren't probably unpacked and what have you.
They weren't unpacked. They were, according to them, they were still on the truck.
Okay. Yeah.
They were still on the truck. So I said, oh, okay. And I should have taken it further, but I mean, I tried to, but I don't want to be a jerk, right? I shouldn't have to be a jerk. I'm the customer here. So I don't want to create a bad situation for other people. I mean, they're just doing their job and they're listening to that dirty policy word. So they said, unfortunately, we have a bunch of them. We can't give them to you because they're all still on the truck. She said, but I could sell you the one here that's on display. And I said, well, there's a bunch of dents in the front. I don't mind taking it off your hands, but what kind of discount do I get for taking one that's on the shelf with a bunch of dents in it? Well, because we have other ones in stock, we can't give you a discount on this one. And I said, well, that's where I was like, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, what do you mean? You don't actually. I said, okay, well, why can't you just get the other ones on? Well, they're buried. We have a ton of stock because it's spring and blah, 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 blah. Okay, but you can't sell me those because you're not willing to get someone to get it. So, and I'm not really willing to sit around and wait all day for you to get it off the back of a truck. So their other solution was, well, you could just go to the Washington Township location, which is, I don't even know where the Washington Township location is. Like in Washington Township per se. Like I know where Washington Township is. It's not that far away, but my point is I don't know. Like I'm here now. I want to buy it, and if it's not here, I'm not driving 20 minutes each way to go buy one. Like I don't need it that bad, but I would like it. I'd like to go home and just pop it in place, take the few things that we have in ours and put it in and throw it up online. So, yeah, they wouldn't sell it to me because the policy states that if you have them in stock, which they didn't, they're still on a truck, so they couldn't sell it to me. They can't give me a discount on the one. I was surprised they were even willing to sell the one that they had on the shelf.
I was too, because I would have to think that they were just going to have to replace it with one of the ones that came in, or...
Yeah.
So...
And that one had dents,
right.
So it's not even like it was new. And the other thing I was thinking was, even if it didn't have dents, I have to transport it without any kind of boxing, so I'm probably going to put dents in it too, or potentially damage something to get it home. Or someone might, I'm sure it's not super light. I mean, it's probably not super heavy either, but you got to pull it down off of the shelf and all that. So that's the thing, like. At that point, see, if it was me, I would have been like, let me get my manager and see what we can do as far as like 10% off or something. Because I still got to pay tax on that. And it's got dents. I don't really want it to have dents. But if you're willing to basically take the tax off, and then, like I said, I sell mine for $40. Now you're looking at even less money. At the amount of energy that I'm using, I'm going to save that excess money pretty darn quickly. Without too much effort. So I just think that at that point, policy really sucks. Rules are nice because we can bend and break rules, but policy seems to be something that people like to hide behind because then they don't have to be the bad guy. Somebody else can be the bad guy, and in that case, it's policy. So I mean, you probably thought we were really going to get a fridge or a freezer.
It seemed that way, or we had a discussion last week about. So not just hiding behind policy, but somebody has to be in a position to make decisions, and you can't just constantly refer up the chain. Like the buck has to stop somewhere. Like, okay, I'm the guy. I make the decision, yay or nay. And
I could have asked for a manager, but again, I don't want to be a jerk.
I assumed that she was going to get a manager. I mean, because we were waiting there for 10 minutes. I was kind of wondering what was going on. Maybe they went and checked the warehouse. I don't know, but. At that point, if you hadn't been there and if it was me, I just would have walked. I'm like, you know what? I'm not waiting around any longer. I don't need it that bad.
I didn't want to wait around either. We were there way too long to end up not getting anything. Because had they have waited, we would have had to wait a lot longer. So I'll just, at the end of the day, I'll go back in a couple days and probably get it. Though maybe I'll go back and they won't have any in stock anymore because they've sold them all.
Oh.
So we'll see. Plus, I have to figure out what I'm going to do with all my tables because I have a ton of folding tables that are all stacked up on top of my my current freezer because it's a side loaded one instead of a top loaded one, and I don't know what I'm going to do with all these tables. Like I gotta put them somewhere else because I can't put them on the top because that's how you open the thing. So gotta solve a problem there, but that's the problem I would have figured out pretty quickly had I gotten it and had someone help me move it and put it in place. So I'll figure it out. I'm sure. I have no doubt. But yeah, so that was the big thing from this week. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. I watched a really good. It's not really good. It was good. The new Nicolas Cage film, The Trust, with Elijah Wood in it, and it's probably one of his better movies, like overall. I would think it was very Elijah Wood-esque. Like there was a lot of like funny parts that were like. It was dry humor, but it was like situational funny. like because of the situation. Like it was always ironically funny. So I, if you get a chance to see it, I don't know if it's on like going to be on Netflix or whatever. If you get a chance to see it, I would totally recommend watch. Plus, what's his face? Nicolas Cage has a killer mustache in it, and he plays a cop, so it's definitely hilarious. So check that out for sure. So I guess that pretty much wraps up the week. Like I said, not too much happened. We made a big deal about customer service and getting that fire in your stomach to make all this happen. But yeah,
I suppose the thing is, but where's the incentive there for the employee to, go the extra mile? I mean, especially in like I said, a big box store like the one we went to. You're not making commission. There's really no reason to go out of my way to, try and play let's make a deal, so to speak. I mean, granted, from the customer, your perspective, it's like, well, this stinks. I'm here. I want to buy it. You're not going to sell it to me. Or, you're not going to make a reasonable effort to accommodate me. Then it's like, what the heck. But, from their perspective, it's probably like, we're that store and we don't need your business. Is pretty much the.
Well, though, go to Washington, drive 20 minutes each way to go get yourself a freezer. If I was there to buy a freezer, maybe I would have went, to the probably Lowe's because it was on the way to where the other depot was. Mm-hmm. Actually, what was it? Mikey here said that he just heard that Netflix is raising its subscription price by $2. Even for the grandfathered accounts. Mm-hmm. So going from 8 to 10, I believe, $9.99.
Yeah, I canceled my subscription.
Account. You canceled your subscription, really?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you start to add it up, it's like, how much do I really watch on Netflix as opposed to how much I'm paying? I mean, if I really want to see a movie, I could just go to Redbox and rent it for like $2. And
is it $2 now at Redbox?
Well,
I thought it was $1 a day.
Well, I think it was like I forget it was a DVD or Blu-ray.
Oh, maybe Blu-ray's more. Yeah, probably.
But
more.
Even so, I mean, it's next to nothing, and I don't watch that many movies to really justify. Plus, I'm already paying $100 a year for Amazon Prime. I don't really watch many of their movies. I do take advantage of their 2-day shipping, but it's like if I really need to stream something, I'm already locked in.
That's true.
And then all Netflix is giving me is streaming. They're not going to give me 2-day shipping or free cloud storage or music.
Or free books, free comics.
I don't know about comics, but the thing is, I feel like I get a lot more.
You get free music too.
Right.
The Prime Music is free. I think.
Mean, it's $100. At the same time, I feel like I'm getting my money's worth.
You're getting something out of it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't need things in 2 days and don't use any of their streaming services, then you don't even need Prime, really. Like, if you can wait 4 or 5 days for things,
sure.
Like, they have free shipping on pretty much everything anyway. But 2 days.
But for the cost of shipping in general, it's just like, man, it adds up even for just like standard shipping. It's like,
you can get big things with free shipping. It's crazy. Yeah. Like with free 2-day shipping at that. Oh, we're moving around here. We're squirming.
And the choices on Netflix aren't all that great. I mean, there are some good original Netflix shows. For example, Orange is the New Black or Daredevil. I mean, House of Cards. But at the same time, I mean, there's other ways to get that stuff.
Yeah. Well, not everybody has access to those ways, Matt.
Right. So I can go to a friend's house that has Netflix, is what I was referring to, of course.
Yeah, of course, that's what you meant. Go into a friend's house and Netflix and chilling.
Right. Yeah, Netflix and chilling
with your friends, or as previous guest Jeff Langley was on the show, mm-hmm. and he was talking about which is a future interview. He was talking about his girlfriend because they're both performers, and mm-hmm. she's in Florida right now. So I was like, oh, you're doing a lot of Skype and chills, and he's like, I don't know what that means. I was like, yeah, because you were like way too into your career to have time to even know what Netflix and chill is, let alone Skype and chill, which is what you're clearly doing. But, you got to do what you got to do to make it work. The long-distance relationship thing, I've been there, done that. But, it's not like she doesn't live around here. She just, they work in different areas.
Yeah, where I was going with that was, I mean, when I'm looking to save money, the subscription services are the first thing I look to cut. Netflix, Spotify, Pandora. I mean, it's like, it's all nice, but it's not essential.
Unless you're using it to its fullest ability. Like, Pandora's great if you were going to use Pandora all the time. Or Spotify, like, or using it consistently all around, like every day, then it makes sense. But if you're not going to use it constantly and use it to the fullest potential, then you're right. That's another way to save money is start cutting out those services. Because you can always get them again.
Yeah.
It's not like you couldn't turn it on and turn it on. It's not. They're most of them are non-contracts except for Amazon Prime. It's a year, but
Yeah.
You actually it's $100, but there's ways to get it for less than $100.
Yeah, I mean, there's been twice where they've had some sort of a special
Black Friday, I think, deals or end of the year.
I paid like
deals.
$75 one year, which I thought was it's $25, but still, that's a good savings.
You divide that up over 12 months of you using it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna pay for 2-day shipping on most things if you didn't have it.
Oh God, no.
I mean, unless you really need it, but then you probably would just go to a store.
Right.
To go pick it up.
Yeah, it's still cheaper even with paying for gas and what have you.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely options that you can do to make that work for you. The Netflix thing, like another thing you could do, Mikey, is get some other people because they have other accounts that you could like stream it to multiple devices that are designed for like family deals. Where I think it's like $15, but you could have like 3 or 4 people. So now you're talking about $5 a person.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, I think there's some other aspects to why you would want to do that. I think like you get HD streams versus standard def streams or something like that.
Yeah, it's 2 different options they offer.
Yeah, so there's other ways around it. I mean, even with Amazon Prime, you can set up sub accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So you could split your Prime account with like 1 or 2 other people that live in other locations, and technically you could do that. Now, obviously, I think they might see what what you've been looking at, so you might want to be careful what you're looking at on Amazon, but whether it's it could just be for gifts. It doesn't have to. We don't have to be talking about anything adult here. It could just be for gifts. But you see where I'm going with that, right? Like you want to make sure that you aren't giving away presents, what you're going to give for presents,
sure,
before you actually give them, because we like surprises. So yeah. What else has been going on? Anything else in the news that you saw?
Nothing really drastic. Nothing that really jumped out at me.
No. Well, it's already been it's already been 32 minutes. I mean, last week we went for an hour, but I had a ton more topics to go through than we do this week. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Ava's been squirming around more and more, so she's probably gonna be waking up soon. But yeah, I think it's been a lot of fun. And Matt, I appreciate you coming in again week after week, being my Robin.
Hey, it's fun to participate, and it's good to have a chance to sit down and talk with you. And if people enjoy it, then great.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, this week we coming up shortly is the Guy Hutchinson interview. He is the author of the Sesame Place book, which is really awesome, which I can't wait to actually get to check out past the pieces that I have looked at. And one of the hosts of the Drunk on Disney podcast with the hilarious Dana Snyder. So definitely go check out Drunk on Disney if you can. Great podcast, great, very funny, and if you love Disney, then it's definitely a great way to spend your time. And until next week, Matt, it's been fun, and stay tuned for the interview. Hey dreamers, this show is made possible by listeners like you. If you love the work that has been done so far, please consider going to howtodream.co/donate to contribute. Thank you so much for your consideration and support. Hey dreamers, today I am talking with Guy Hutchinson, who is making his dreams come true by sharing his love of Sesame Place with the world, which I gotta say, being sort of local to Sesame Place, I love Sesame Place. I grew up with Sesame Place, as I'm sure Guy probably did as well, being from roughly the same area as me.
To a degree, I did. Yeah, I didn't get to go much.
Wow, that's. I didn't go a lot. I mean, I could probably remember every trip I took because it wasn't that many times. But I plan on changing that with my daughter on the way.
Good.
And Guy, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm very excited to talk to someone else from my home state.
Yes, and you know what? I love New Jersey.
It is. This is something like I was talking to somebody and they said, "Oh, you're from New York, right?" And I was like, "How dare you?" And I've just realized that it's like a New Jersey thing. They're like any other state, if you said, "Hey, you're from a different state," they're like, "No, no, no, I'm from." But it's like people from New Jersey. We don't want to. We're so used to being kicked around by like Philadelphia, New York, that we're like, "No, we are from New Jersey and we love it better than anything else."
I love Jersey. Though there are a lot of people out there who really don't like Jersey, that are from Jersey. They just find a reason to hate it, and it's such a shame because
No,
we are right in the middle of Rome. I
yeah,
mean,
that's
we're right in the Northeast,
that's
man.
it.
Right outside of New York. Right, Philly's right there. DC's not far.
I love.
Baltimore. Like
Yeah.
we are in the hub. Atlantic
No,
City. Come on now.
it's crazy. You can get to from where I am. I can get to New York in 45 minutes, Philadelphia in 45 minutes. You get to DC in like 3 hours. I mean, you can go see all these things and then come back home, to your own bed, at the end of the night. I love it.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's one of the reasons why I love connecting with people from all over the world and having them come here, and then we get to host them because we live so close to everything.
They're always surprised because they come out here and they expect it to look like one big highway with a bunch of parking lots, and they're like, "Well, you guys have some trees here. You have culture. What? This isn't what I expected. We don't, and we don't all say use. Most of us do, but we don't all say use, guys."
No, that's not me. Though we are, I mean, you're almost in Central Jersey, I think, right?
Yes, right in the middle.
Right. So I'm in South Jersey, born and raised, and it's people are usually surprised at how different South Jersey is compared to what they believe to be New Jersey.
I was once in, let me try to think of what the name of the town was, but it was, what is the thing with the cows and everything? It's like 4-H, 4-H.
Cowtown?
No, well, I've been to Cowtown. I love Cowtown.
That's only like 20 minutes from me, man.
Oh, I
Not 10
love
minutes from
Cowtown.
me.
Yes, no, but it wasn't that. It was a 4-H fair. I wanted to say a Triple H fair, which would be a totally different thing. But I was at a 4-H fair down in South Jersey, and I was just stunned at how southern it was, and I loved it. I was like, this is like a vacation for me, and and I'll be home in 45 minutes.
Oh yeah, I mean, some people like to think that they're from the South, even
Yeah.
though they're clearly not, just
No,
because
but
they're from South Jersey.
I know, but that's the thing. It's like you get to South Jersey sometimes. You can see cows and horses, and there was a sculpture made out of butter. I mean, the 4-H fair was great. I wish you guys could go. It was like 3 years ago, so you can't go now anymore. I'm sure there's a new one every year.
There is, and there's actually quite a few of them right around here, my house. In fact, I mean, there's a farm across the street from my house. Behind the houses, there's a whole farm with like sheep and chickens and roosters and stuff like that.
We have farms in my area, but not like right near me. But if I drive 25 minutes, I can get to farms. And when I was looking for a house at one point, I almost bought a farm. There was because I was looking at different houses, and one of them it was like designated farmland. And I'm talking to the guy, and he had no animals, but he had I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 acres. It wasn't a huge farm, but it was a farm. And I started talking to him about what animals he had, and he was like, "Well, I've had some goats, and I've had some." And I started talking about prices, and he was like, "You might be able to get a cow for under $100." And I was like, "Okay, wait a minute, this house sounds so awesome." But I ended up not going with it, sadly, so I have no cow. But there was that dream. It's still out there. I'm still going to chase that dream.
Wait, you could get a cow for about
Yeah.
$100?
Apparently you can't. Well, think about this. So you get an old cow. What they say is like you're looking at an old cow. It's not making milk anymore and isn't good for much more than like taco meat. Those cows, because I mean, how much is a cow going to be? They can't be super expensive, or else you'd be paying a lot for tacos. So yeah, you can get an older cow for. I'm going to say that guy was right. You can get an older cow for under $100.
Probably. Yeah, I just go to Taco Bell and get, my dollar taco or my dollar burger. Yeah, so yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about it's not going to be a good-looking cow. This is going to be an ugly-looking cow, but it's a cow. Cow needs a home.
All right, so Guy, let's get into your background, man, because we've already spent 5 minutes talking about our love of Jersey, and I love Jersey, obviously, and you do too. So it's The feeling is mutual on this end, but let's get into Guy Hutchinson and how he got to where he is right now with writing a book and really
Yeah.
making his love of Sesame Street really known to the world.
Yeah, it's a really neat story. I was a radio announcer for many years in New Jersey, and I've done a lot of different things. And I've always loved writing, but I never thought I'd write a book. I've written a lot of things that were that you'd write down, but I never thought a book would be published that would have my words in it. And a few years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine. His name's Tim Liebarger, and Tim runs a Mr. Rogers fan website. And what I was stunned about Tim was that Mr. Rogers wasn't his favorite thing in the world. He had lots of other interests that were bigger than Mr. Rogers, but he ran this Mr. Rogers site. And I also found that Tim wasn't the biggest Mr. Rogers fan he knew. He was like, I know a lot of people that know more about it than me, that are bigger fans than me. He's like, I love it. I think it's a great show. I think he was a great man. He's like, but this is not my number one passion. He's like, but the thing was, he went on the internet one day, was looking for a site with information about Mr. Rogers episodes, and there was no site. There was nothing he could find. It was just little bits of information here and there. And I thought about that, and I was like, it's a really good point, that he became the expert on this thing just because nobody else was, and there was room for it. And now there were all these other like-minded people he then met afterwards that came along and said, my God, I've wanted something like this for so long, but they didn't step forward and do it. He was the guy who said, I'll go ahead and make this, make this website and cultivate this love for this man and this character on television. So a few years, well, if we go back to the 1980s, Sesame Place opens, right? And for those that haven't been, it is a Sesame Street themed theme park outside of Pennsylvania, been open for 35 years. And I went to it twice as a kid. I got to go once when they were about 5 years old, so I had waited 5 years to go to it. And then I went once more, like when I was a little older, and I was there with like my sister and like her friends or her school or something. And I was kind of aging out of it at the time, and but I loved it. And I looked around and thought, wow, this is so cool. I wish I could go here more often because it's right in my backyard, but it's a theme park. Unlike, like people go to Walt Disney World, they'll go on their honeymoon, just a couple will go to Walt Disney World. But you won't go your honeymoon and go over to Sesame Place and, eat breakfast with Elmo and ride on, the Super Grover roller coaster. So it was like this weird thing where I lived around it and I drive by it. It's right near the mall. So anytime I would go to that mall, I'd see, like the giant rubber ducky they had. And I'd say, wow, what is going on in there? And then I had a kid and I took my son in there. And here's the thing I didn't know. I went in there with my son, and it had been, about, 25 years or 20 years since I had been there. And so I go in and I start looking around, and I said, well, what, there's so much that has changed in this. Actually, it was probably close to 30 years. So much has changed in this 30 years. I can't place where any of the stuff I remember is. Like all my memories meant nothing. It's like you go to Walt Disney World today and you go to Walt Disney World 30 years ago, you go on Pirates of the Caribbean, you go on It's a Small World. A lot of the stuff is still there. There's new stuff, but a lot of the stuff is still there. And this was kind of weird. It's like my memories were all, couldn't place where they were in relation to everything else. So I went online and started trying to read about it. Now, what I didn't know was Sesame Place in 1980 was 3 acres. Sesame Place in 2016, is 14 acres plus. And so it's just grown drastically. But I went online and there was like no information. There was a Muppet Wiki that had some information, which I've later found out a lot of it was wrong, and it was very little information. There was a book that came out, and it was called Street Gang: The Complete Story of Sesame Street. And if you read Street Gang, and it's a great book, it's very good, but if you read it, there's one paragraph about Sesame Place. There's one paragraph in the complete history of Sesame Street about the only Sesame Street theme park anywhere in the world. And it's this one little paragraph where they're talking about Walt Disney World in a larger chapter about Walt Disney World and the Muppets, where they mention that, Sesame Place is a theme park, that there was one in Texas, there was one in Tokyo, and there still is. The original one is still around in Pennsylvania. So I'm searching around trying to find information, and it's just not there, and so it became a matter of, I would go to the park with my son. So I had my little kid that I'm dragging around. He's a little baby in a little baby holder, and I'm dragging him into the park. He's sleeping through the whole visit, but I'm looking around and looking at buildings, and I'm looking at like, let me look at where this building is, and then watching people's home movies on YouTube where they were there in 1986, 1982, and looking at saying, well, that building was there in 82, then this thing used to be here. And I started to piece together all my memories and said, okay, I remember everything now. When I got there as a little kid, there was a Big Bird head, and you walk through his mouth across this giant bridge. It's all gone. I mean, it's all, all that has gone. Yeah, I mean, it's gone.
Man.
I know. I mean, but so they've also changed the entrance. Like, if you think of Walt Disney World, right? If you think of the Magic Kingdom, you enter, you go up Main Street, there's the castle, Tomorrowland's over on the side. They essentially changed the entrance at Sesame Place so it's on the side. It would be like walking through Tomorrowland to enter the park, because they totally expanded it. So what used to be the entrance is now smack in the middle of the park. So they slowly expanded. They added all these water attractions on one side. They added, different shows and eventually rides. And so the more I read, I kept thinking, wow, this is such a great story. This is like a really fantastic story. So I said, this, like my friend Tim Leibarger said about Mr. Rogers, I said, this is something that I'm looking for. Maybe somebody else is looking for it. So I'm going to start taking all the stuff I find. I'd look through old newspaper articles. I'd even go to the library and look at microfilm, and everything I found, I put it up on a blog. I just, put it on the blog. And one day, after I'd been doing the blog for like a year, just little by little, whenever I'd find something new, I'd put it up on there. A gentleman named Chris Mercaldo contacted me, emailed me and said, hey, can I give you a call? And I said, sure, here's my number. Go ahead, give me a call. And he called me up and he said, look, I wrote a book for History Press, Arcadia Publishing, called Adventureland, about Adventureland in New York. And he said, I'm working with them to do a book on Sesame Place. And he said, I noticed that you have this blog that has all the information. Every time I look for information, that's where I'm finding it. He said, would you like to write it with me? And I said, I am so there. I'm, of course. And I kind of thought that would probably be the end of it. I figured he'd ask and they'd probably say no. I figured, it's a big company, Sesame Street. It's like a huge copyright, thing. They probably have a billion lawyers, and they probably have their own people to write books. But sure enough, a few months later, we're on the phone with, people from Sesame Workshop, and they're asking me questions about it. They're like, why do you think we need this book? And I'm, and like, as if one of those times where you open your mouth and words come out and you hadn't even thought of them, I just started saying stuff that must have been brilliant to them. I was just saying, I was like, you guys need to, fuel nostalgia. And, people love nostalgia, and they'll look at this book and they'll say, hey, I was there. That's where I played. And I played at this place when I was little. And now my kid's playing here. And that they'll connect their memories to your park better. And I said all this stuff. And the woman goes, that's a wonderful answer. And I was like, good, because I don't even remember what I said. But next thing you know, we're putting this book together, and I'll tell you, it was for somebody like me that's a big theme park guy and a huge fan of Sesame Street and the Muppets and all that, to be able to go into a theme park and have total access, total access. Like, I got to go in the room where you go in a room and they've got the costumes, they've got all the feathers and all that. And it was just like, you could see what, how they put together Big Bird, and like, rows of Ernie's shoes and stuff, and go through every drawer they had and look for photos. And anytime I had a question, like little things, I'd say, hey, this truck, you guys have an antique fire truck here. Where'd you get it? And somebody would say, well, I'll find out. And then, 2 days later, this gentleman, Greg Hartley, calls me up. He say, okay, here's what happened. They bought it at the dump. It cost this much money. This is the name of the towing company. I mean, anything I wanted to know, we were able to find out. And we worked really, really hard to make a book that I thought would appeal to people that had never been there. Because my idea is a lot of people, you and I, we know this park because we're local. People all around the world don't know this park, but they know these characters. And I said, I want to put this out in a way that if you've never been there, you don't come into it. You don't have to know anything going in. And it's a photo book. And I want it to be one of those things where if you're like me, and photo book means you flip through and then you read the words only when you don't understand the picture. I wanted it to work that way for people. I wanted if you pick it up and you just want to look at the pictures, you'll get the story. You know, there was a good arc. So we worked together and put it together. It was just, I mean, it really was such an amazing experience, life-changing experience.
Wow. Okay. So, the thing about Sesame Place, at least growing up, a lot of it was like you were saying, like it was more experiences than like you wait in line for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you get to ride the ride. Like, and the other thing is that I love about it is that it married the water park element to the not water park element. I mean, do they still have the pyramid in there? Like that thing that you would like climb down into and like the balls would hover.
So what you're talking about, there was two different pyramids that one of them was called the Rainbow Pyramid, and it was you would go climb down into like this sort of pit, and they had this big metal pyramid, and you put the balls on top of it and they'd float on top of it. There was another one, and that one's gone. Both of the pyramids are gone. The other one was called Cookie Mountain, and it was also shaped like a pyramid. It was made out of like tarp material, and at the bottom was for a long time was balls like out of a ball pit, and they were at the bottom because when Sesame Place opened, here's a crazy thing. In 1980, when they opened, the ball pit had been invented by a man named Eric McMillan. And Eric McMillan was the main designer of Sesame Place. He invented the ball pit for SeaWorld San Diego in 1976. So this was a 4-year-old idea when they brought it to Langhorne, Pennsylvania. So it was a huge deal. Like in 1980, I remember like as a kid, like even my parents and their friends were like, it's amazing. You can swim without getting wet at this place. They've got balls and somehow you can swim through them. And now they don't have any ball pits. And ball pits, I think we've, as a society, have decided that our hygiene as a culture, particularly children, is not good enough to sustain ball crawls. But at the time, if you can imagine going in one and having never heard of one before, I mean, it was really novel. And this guy, Eric McMillan, that was his whole thing, was he went around and kind of rethought playground equipment. He looked at it as, what are we doing and how could we do it better? And he had ideas like putting foam flooring, how you have that at every park now. He was like the guy who thought of that. He thought of using plastic slides, not having all metal slides, and then using tube slides that would spin around. They called him, Time Magazine called him the next Walt Disney in the 70s. And it's not an unfair thing to say that he's still around, but he worked on parts of theme parks around the world. I mean, this was probably the most famous one that he was the main designer on. But like, if you go to, Paris, there's places where, he designed this area, he designed this ride, this section, and just thought of things like cargo nets, like you were talking about, how everything was very active. And they were first on water attractions for this area as well. Dorney Park opened Wild Water Kingdom, I believe, in 1985. Sesame Place had their first water attraction in 1982. And they were, in 1982 was very early for water attractions. Water attractions came about in the late 70s out in California when somebody decided, they said, hey, if we could because at that point, water parks, the modern water park started in 77 with Wet and Wild out in Florida is considered the first real one. But there was a guy named, I think his name was Robert Budge Brown, who he was a farmer out in California who he went to Italy, saw an Italian water park, which was all concrete slides where kids would get like on a little mat, slide down the concrete. And he thought, well, this is great. I'm going to bring this back to California. Builds his own water park with these concrete slides, but people kept getting stuck. They'd fall off their mat, and he thought they were too slow. And he started experimenting with using fiberglass. And that's when water slides went from being, you'd slowly come down them to whoosh, you'd sweep down, 10 miles an hour or whatever, and faster until now, they're just crazy.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a ton of history, and I love
It's
it.
a lot. Yeah, it's a lot at once. I'm sorry.
No.
I'll talk
right.
slower.
No. You are fine, Guy.
I'm super passionate about this stuff. I find that the history of theme parks, you and I were both big Disney fans. And I find that the history of Disney theme parks is cataloged to a degree that you can't imagine. If I want to go online and say, when did they put the fence up over here, right in front of this, area of Phantasmic or something, I can look up and be like, oh, okay, that went up on March 13th, and then they painted it on, in June, I can read all that, but I feel like every other theme park in the world, there seems to be almost no attention to history on it. And I feel like it is like the thing that at least I do. And I feel like a huge amount of people in this country and this world look at as being the most important thing in their life. It's their one, it's the thing they look forward to all year is they're going to theme parks. They're going to work all the time. And then when they get that break, that's what they're going to do for fun. And I feel like it's something that, like we, other entertainment, movies, things like that, we write the history down to a degree that but nobody knows. You go to even a place like Walt Disney World or even Universal Studios, people don't know who built any of these rides. There's no closing credits for them. I feel like that kind of stuff is fascinating, and I feel like it's something that needs to be preserved for future generations and even just for the current generation.
Oh, definitely, and like you said, but with Disney, in Disney's case, a lot of that stuff, you do a Google search and you're gonna get names out the wazoo.
Right.
But with a place like Sesame Place or these smaller ones that are local, you're not gonna necessarily get that.
I couldn't believe when I looked it up. I said, "Wow, there's no book," And if there had been a book on Sesame Place before mine, I would have bought it, I would have read it, and we wouldn't be talking about it now because I would have just been the guy that read it, which is why I say if somebody's out there and they're passionate about anything, or they look something up and they're like, hey, this information's not out there, find it and put it out there. And you'll be the guy, you'll be the person who presents it to the world.
Definitely. And just to mention the fact that this isn't just a one thing for you, because we are both Disney fans. You do a podcast as well.
Yes, I do a crazy show called Drunk on Disney, which we're 100 episodes in, so I think it was about 2 years ago. I was talking to Dana Snyder, who is best known as the voice of Master Shake on Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Huge fan.
He's also done everything else though. Like right now he's on Nickelodeon on the Thundermans. He plays Dr. Colosso, and he's always working on like 10 different shows.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of Master Shake like playing on a kid's show.
Oh, but that's the crazy thing. He's done so many
breaking
kids
stuff and you
like he's done he did Chowder, Flapjack, I believe was another show he did. He's done dozens of shows. He's done a few Disney shows. He was on Fish Hooks. He was the teacher on Fish Hooks for every season of that show. And if you ever play Epic Mickey 2, he's the main gremlin that's trying to put back together the world that Oswald's at. And you got your paintbrush. So I was interviewing him, and I was interviewing him about his career. And he was an acquaintance of mine, but this was we were having our first long chat, where we were, doing this interview for another podcast that I used to do. And we were talking about his career. And everything kept coming back to, hey, have you ever eaten at the beer garden? Or then 20 minutes later, oh, you know what I really like, though? I really like the Jeremy Irons narration on Spaceship Earth. And so it just became this weird thing where all we were ever doing, during this interview about him that was supposed to go for 30 minutes, went well over 2.5 hours. And all we did was talk about Disney. We barely talked about his career. And so then like halfway through, he's like, you and I should do one of those Disney podcasts. And so we then, our first guest was a man named Bart Scott, who's written a book, of The Real Man's Guide to Walt Disney World. And so we brought him on as a guest, and then we were like, let's keep that guy on every week too. And he was happy to do it. So the three of us have been doing that show for 100 episodes. And hopefully we'll do it for 500 more. And what we do, we just talk about Disney World, and we like to try out cocktails from Epcot and from the hotels. So we try some of those specialty cocktails. We'll tell you how to make it and tell you if it's any good. And we'll do a toast to someone in the history of Disney. I try to find the most obscure person, the person that people wouldn't think to associate with Walt Disney World.
Wow, I love it, and that's so awesome that worked out for you. And so many times that's a lot. How a lot of people I know that end up with having hosts, right, or getting to host the show with somebody that has, well, I don't know if famous is the right word, but famous.
Sure. It's crazy. We've actually, the cool thing is we've done, Dana and I have done live shows for Drunk on Disney. We've hosted elaborate Drunk on Disney paid events in Miami. We'll be doing another one over 4th of July weekend. Last year I hosted a big Drunk on Disney event in Iowa. And so I've been able to travel because of this crazy podcast and this, fun book. So, I mean, it's one of those things where if you talk about following your dreams, this has been beyond that for me.
Well, I would agree. Does Dana live in Miami or something? Is that why you guys always go to Miami? Because you've done a couple of events in Miami. I think, right?
He lives out in California, in Los Angeles. But always, what happened was he was doing a convention. He does a lot of conventions. We also did one in Washington, D.C. But we did one in Miami. I guess it was 2 years ago this month. So it was like 2 years ago this month we did one. And it was so great. The convention, the best conventions you'll ever find are these ones that are hosted by Florida SuperCon in Miami. They do one called Magic City Comic-Con, one called Animate Miami, and one called Florida SuperCon. I've been to a lot of other conventions. There's a lot of great conventions in this world, but out of all the ones I've been to, they're the most fun. And what I found was Miami was great because it's close enough to Walt Disney World that you get a lot of Disney fans, but it's far enough away that they don't mind making fun of Disney a little bit. Like you can get away with like making a few jokes about Disney and stuff, and these guys have a little bit more fun with it. And so we just have been going to every convention. Dana wasn't at the last one I did was in early January, and Dana wasn't there, but we did this big Drunk on Disney karaoke event. So usually, if we can, the two of us are both there for those, and hopefully we'll get to do some other places. But it's one of those crazy things where you've got the support of the promotion that's running the convention. You've got the locale that's kind of perfect for people that want to party but also know Disney. Like Iowa. I was stunned at how many people there loved Walt Disney World. I was stunned because I was thinking you guys couldn't be further away from Disney parks. You're like right in the middle. But Miami, you go there and you ask anybody, everybody's like, oh yeah, I went there last week. I went there 3 months ago. Everybody knows about it.
So I got to ask, Guy, like, how does your family take you writing a book and having this podcast? And
well, I will tell you, my wife has not read the book yet, but she's still planning on it. It's been out for about 8 months. She's flipped through it. She said it looks very cute. And my son, he would not let me autograph his copy, and instead he took it to the park, got it signed by Elmo, Big Bird, Cookie Monster. So they're supportive, as supportive as you can get. And they all love it. It's been great. I'll tell you, my family, it was one of those things where I was a guy who I failed every English course I ever took. You know what I mean? I did summer school. I remember that was the only time I ever did summer school was on an English class. And so I would love to go to that teacher and show her that, say, hey, look, somehow I figured out that I could write something if I had a proofreader and an editor and get it published.
I put sentences together.
That's right.
And people paid for it.
I have, like, I don't know where to put commas. Commas still, fascinate me. I have no, I get done with a paragraph and just throw a bunch of them in there and hope that they're in the right spot.
Just like you're rolling the dice at the craps table.
But and my spelling is atrocious, but it doesn't matter anymore. You got that spell check. I mean, there's words that pop up. There's a lot of I before E, that I before E except after. That's not true. That's E goes before I all the time. It's those rules, all those things we learn don't always apply, and they confuse me. But I'm very it's been great. My parents are super proud. Everybody, I got a lot of nieces and nephews, and so they all got the book and loved it and flipped through it. And my wife loves it because she loves Sesame Place and Disney World as much as me. So to have any kind of neat connection to it is so yeah, it's great. Everybody loves it.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I guess it's a very good thing that she does love Disney and Sesame Place and stuff because.
My wife, she loves it. Yeah, she does. She loves it, but in a total different way than me, and I think a different way than you. I feel like there's two types of Disney fans. It boils down to there's the type of Disney fan that they're into it when they get there. They're like, hey, where's our vacation? It's going to be Disney. Love it. Can't wait to get there. Then they get there and they start saying, oh, what's new? What opened? What can we try? Let's go on this one again. And then there's people like myself who, the moment they get on the plane at the end of the trip, start going, all right, let's see, we could probably go back in 8 months. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to check to see if there's any news on this. And I got to see how this is going. And, constantly looking for updates and watching, videos on YouTube of, oh, I remember that ride. And so I feel like she's one of those where once she gets home, she's got no interest in. She's not going on, Mice Chat every day to check what's going on and not checking out, podcasts about it. But she's super into it, and I'm super glad about it. I think if we were both obsessed with it, it would not be as good because I wouldn't be like, now I can kind of gauge when I'm getting too far in. It's like I can see where it's like you're on a ship and you can see out to shore. You're like, okay, that's where the shore is. But if she was out there with me, I would have no idea where the shore is.
No, because sometimes it's tough to bring yourself back, especially when you're super into it and stuff like that. So I can appreciate the fact that you like to have somebody that I don't want to use the term rock, but
sure, a little more grounded. I'll tell you, like, I've literally when I plan a trip, while I'm planning that trip, I'm thinking about the next trip, because you'll look and you'll say, oh, well, this is closed. Okay, well, that's all right. I can do that next time. So next time I should probably go back during this month. And I also I really like to check out all the restaurants, but there's only so many meals you can eat. So you start saying, well, okay, we'll put this one over to there. This will go to that trip. And, so I plan it and replan it. I don't know how you do it, but I will sit there with a pen and paper and I'll write down what I want to do. I put everything into 3 categories. When I go to Disney World, I say, my ones that I must do, which is usually just a few. You can't say your must do is everything, because you're not going to do it. You literally, I want to put the ones that are must do's. I must do them. So it's 3 or 4 things. And then there's the I really want to do it. There's the I don't care if I do it, and then there's Mission Space. Because Mission Space is the I definitely don't want to do it.
Well, if you did, you wouldn't have to wait very long.
Are you a Mission Space fan?
I used to like it, but as I get older, it becomes more disorienting for me.
I watched the video on YouTube recently, and I was like, oh, okay, the video's not too bad. But I went on it the first time, and the first thing is the magic. For those that don't know, it's this simulator that you're going to Mars and it spins you around. And the magic was ruined for me because 2 of the people, it was me, my wife, and then 2 other people. You get 4 people and you each get a role. There's like the engineer, the captain, the pilot, I don't know, whatever else you got. The guy who turns the burners off and on. Yeah, exactly. You each have a role. And the 2 people in my group, the other 2 strangers, that were in with us, didn't speak English. And so they were talking to each other in Spanish or Argentinian or something the whole time, and so they didn't understand, like when the machine would say, "Engineer, please push your button." You know, there's these moments, and so they were the first two that had to do something. And so they didn't push their button. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, you got to push the button. But they don't understand what I'm saying. And they're looking at me going, what's this crazy guy? Why is he telling us to push this button? And then it would go, override, override. And so I said, oh, okay, well, then I'm not going to push the button either. And so that part of it was killed. But it really spins you around. It does one of those. And I heard they're like, it's like a real space simulator. And I'm like, great. I'm not going to outer space. Give me the fake simulator. That's fun. And so then I remember, a couple people had some serious issues on it. And so they opened up a lesser version, right? The green version. And I said, oh, now I'm in. I said, I can't wait. So I go back, second time I'm ever going to go on this. And I go in and I was like, that wasn't any different. I felt like it spun me exactly the same amount.
Hey, it's not supposed to spin.
It doesn't go upside down from what I understand, but it still moves. It's not stationary.
Huh. I thought it was stationary and just like rocked back and forth.
Well, I may have had a lot to drink that day, Joe. So there's another possibility.
Considering the source, I wouldn't be surprised. Guy, what would you say has been your biggest roadblock, like with the book or podcasting?
Well, so I've written a lot of other things. I've written a handful of books, and I find that I'm not a good judge of what I've done, whether it's, A, B, C, or D material. And I kind of like the best thing that you need to have some kind of, if you're going to write or if you're going to do anything, whatever it is, it's good to have some other people that know how to do it better than you, that you can turn to. And I have some really good friends that, like, I have a friend named Zach Knutson who just did the Captain America special that was on ABC. And Zach is he directs documentaries, but he knows story better than anybody else. And so when I have questions about the layout of a story, I'll tell him, and he'll usually just look at it and say, well, move this to here, move that to here. And you'll say, wow, I never would have thought to do that. But, so it's always good, I find, to have some, because that to me is like the biggest roadblock. And there is always the thing where if you wrote it, you usually like it. That's why you wrote it. That's why you thought it. And that's why you put it out on paper. And that's why I like collaborating. I did this one with Chris, and it was great to work on this book with him because I was able to, there were some things that I looked at him and I was like, how's this? And he's like, that's great. And I'm like, good, because I thought it was okay. And then there were other things where I'm like, and this part, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, maybe we could redo that. That needs work. I'm like, really? I thought that was A+ material, but it's nice to be able to have that, because that is my big thing.
Well, what they say, if you're the smartest guy in the room, then you need to find a different room to be in.
That is very good. That's good advice.
So I know I agree, having somebody that can put things into perspective for you, especially when it comes to writing. If you're not the strongest writer, right? Like, you didn't go to school to be a writer. You clearly you didn't do great in school at the writing part, but that doesn't mean a whole lot, especially like I said, in today's world with editors and just spell check alone.
To be fair,
helps.
I did do a lot of journalism when I got to college, but in my younger days, when I was a youth, I was a much worse student. I did get a little better, but around that time they started to have spell check. That was really, to me, that was and grammar check, where you'd look at it and say, oh, come on. And so you do get, the good thing is I feel like we've gotten better and worse as a society because of that, because we don't have to know how to spell things, but because it's always correcting us, we tend to find new mistakes to make. It's like you see it correct you so many times, you're like, all right, why does it keep putting the red line under there? Let me figure this out. It is a great time to live in, though, because it is a time, if you want to research things, I mean, even like when I was saying Sesame Place, the information wasn't out there, in another time, it would have been much harder to find it. I mean, I was able to, you could go through newspaper archives, a lot of them without leaving your house now, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, instead of sitting in a basement somewhere at a library, going through those whatever, what are they called?
Microfilm.
Microfilm. That's the
Yeah.
word I was looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is, and it's funny because there are things out there, and if you were thinking about like, hey, I have a passion, like I was saying about something, but the information isn't really like together anywhere. You can
Yeah.
be that person and put it together. And again, you don't have to be like the biggest fan ever of that one particular thing.
Yeah, I mean that was what my friend Tim said to me, and that's what that clicked so well with me because prior to that, I would always think, well, I shouldn't be the guy to write this. Who am I to write this? And I think that's what we always think. Who am I to do whatever it is? And you should do it. Everybody you have my permission, you have Joe's permission. Whatever you're interested in doing, go out and do it.
Amen.
Within legal limits.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want anybody on the stand in any trial saying, Guy and Joe said it was fine. I got a tape here to play.
Well, I'll just point at Nike and say, well, they said just do it. So you're going to sue
right.
them too?
It's true.
Guy, what was your childhood dream growing up?
That's a good question. I wanted to be Jim Henson when I was growing up, and I didn't know what that exactly meant, but I just wanted to be like, I loved the idea of somebody that I learned about him a lot when I was a kid. And my dad he's not a big fan necessarily of Jim Henson's work. Like he's not a big puppet fan or anything, but when I started being into the Muppets and Sesame Street as a kid, he learned Jim Henson's story, and he found his personal story, to be very interesting and always would tell me about it. And I love the idea of a guy who created his own market. If you go back to the early days of Jim Henson, he did a show called Sam and Friends on television in the 1950s. And Jim Henson revolutionized the way puppets are seen. The concept of the Muppets that we see today are far different than puppets were prior to his time. He created, the general concept of what that kind of puppet is. Prior to that, a lot of puppets, they had punch puppets, which were puppets that didn't move their mouths at all. You had marionettes, you had ventriloquist dummies, and he kind of came up with his own style of puppet. And people even, puppeteers everywhere, they call them Muppet-style puppets, when they have that kind of a flap mouth. And I like the fact that somebody, just created, found their own thing. And it's you'd think all these years later, there's less and less to find, but there's still things out there. There's people every day revolutionizing things. But I don't know. I always wanted to be some weird niche part of something. And, I've sort of done that and I'm happy about it. And I'm going to keep working at it. I always like, every now and then you'll watch a movie where there'll be an elderly character in it. You see like Home Alone, and you see like the old man who lives next door, and
you aspire to be that old man?
No, I do. Yes, I want to carry around my shovel and keep the bodies in there so the salt will turn them into mummies, like his brother said. No, but every now and then I'll see one of those movies and I'll look up that actor. And I'll find out, that wasn't an actor. That was a guy. The guy in Home Alone was an actor. But sometimes you'll read these and they'll be like, no, it was this old lady who, they were talking to when they were making the pre-production stuff. She was a secretary at whatever, or she was the mother of somebody. And they thought she was so charming or he was so interesting that they put him in this movie. And then here's this person that's 80 years old that then says, hey, this is what I want to do. There was an actor named Burt Mustin. If you go back into the days when he was on, I think, Leave It to Beaver, and then he was later on All in the Family, and he did tons of movies. But he was a guy who, as a senior citizen, became an actor. Colonel Sanders became the head of KFC, the world-famous chicken entrepreneur, after he was over 65 years old. So I feel like the cool thing also is that you never have to stop following your dreams. There's always time to follow your dreams.
And it's important that it's like, sometimes what was it? I remember watching a commercial once. It was for the golf. It was like for the Golf Channel or something like that.
Right.
And it's like, hey, these kids weren't amazing at everything else until they put a golf club in their hand, and now these kids are amazing at golf. So in life, sometimes you don't know that you're going to wind up being good at something or that perfect type of role if you were trying to go for acting or discovered by accident and until you're that age, right? Because you might not have been good at it at a young age for one reason or another. You didn't have that look, that distinguished look, or you didn't have that old man look or that old lady look or whatever they're looking for at the time. And that's one of the things, talking with a previous guest, is like, he's like, I love being an actor in New York. He's like, because you know what? I get roles for bald fat guys.
Yeah,
that's the thing. So I don't have to work out. I don't have to be somebody I'm not. And he's like, you know what? Everything worked for me when I started being myself and stopped trying to be the worked out guy that like kind of had hair. Like I got to be the fat bald guy, and that's been working for. That's it's paying the bills.
Let me give you here's a great piece of advice that my dad gave me when I was younger. I was on the wrestling team in high school. And I remember I was looking at, it was like junior year, and I was like, I don't know that I'll be able to win the championship next year. And I don't know, why am I going to keep doing it if I'm not going to be the best at it? To me, it was like, well, I've tried this for 3 years and I'm good at it, but I'm not great at it. And my dad said something to me that I thought made so much sense. He said, if you ask Michael Jordan might not have been the best player on his team when he was growing up. And he said, but more than that, if you ask Michael Jordan right now if he's the best, and this was at the time he was still playing. Now he'll say, no, I'm not the best. I'm a guy sitting at home on my couch. But if you go to the best player in the NBA and you ask him if he's the best, he'll say, well, I'm great at this and that, and I have the highest on this, but that guy is better at free throws than me, or that guy is better at taking it to the hoop, or this guy's faster than me. And so what he was saying to me was that no one can be the best, that you shouldn't aspire to be the best. You aspire to be the best you can be. And that's what you need to be, because you should set your goals as high as you can, but your goal should always be out of reach. It should always be something you're trying for, and you keep reaching at it, because no one, it doesn't matter, like Mike Tyson, when he was, again, I don't have any athletes I can name from this century, sadly. But if you name the best of the best, they still will say, yeah, but you know what? When I was younger, when I was training, this guy was better than me. And, and on any given night, any team can beat any other team. And I feel like it's that way in everything that you should never let the fact that you find other people better than you at something stand in your way from going to the top that you can get to in it.
I think that really echoes the theme of what we were talking about earlier with like just start, even if you're not the most knowledgeable, you will most likely become the most knowledgeable, and you'll again, if you're the smartest one in the room anyway, time to find a new room to be in.
Right. No, I love that. I don't know that I've heard that expression before, and I like it a lot.
It's a little different than.
I don't think you created it. I'm assuming you've heard it, but
something to that effect. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's great. I think it's very well put.
Well, usually they say it in poker is like, if you can't find the sucker, then you're the sucker.
Yeah. Well, I've always heard if you don't know who the crazy member of your family is, then
it's probably
you. Yeah.
So, Guy, what are your aspirations going forward into the future?
I've written a lot of books, and one of the things I've found is that if you want to write, you'll write ones and then you'll put them aside and you'll start writing something else, and then maybe you'll come back to it. There's one that I started writing in 2001, finished it in 2001, was done with it. Never did anything with it. It sat on a hard drive. And then like a year ago, I was like, hey, you know what would be good? If I change this, it took place at the Statue of Liberty, the story, and the Pentagon. I was like, what if instead of the Statue of Liberty and the Pentagon, I move it to Cinderella's castle, I move it to Walt Disney World. And I started rewriting it. And I then put it aside again, but I rewrote the whole thing, right? And totally, expanded it to 50,000 words. And I'm still not satisfied with it, but maybe I'll have some other idea, that'll come to me at some point for it. And within that, there was a story about these pigeons. It was a small part of this bigger story, and I took this little piece with these pigeons, and I was telling a friend of mine, a guy named Captain Marvelous, who's an artist in California, not his birth name. And Captain Marvelous and I were talking about this, and we're turning it into a children's book. He does artwork, and so he's doing the paintings for this little idea I had. So I always tell people just to keep writing. I have several different things I'm working on, and hopefully, a year from now, I'll have one of them, and we can come back and talk about it. But even if I don't, I'll be working on some other things, and maybe something totally different, but something. And I feel like the journey to doing this stuff is just as important as the end result. So if you never publish the book, you don't make any money off of it. That's a downer. But other than that, you gain all the experience. If this book on Sesame Place never came out, the experiences I had writing it, the experiences I had going into the park with a security guard who would open every door for me, I mean, you can't put a price on that, going into the office of the president of Sesame Place and looking around at all the pictures in his office and picking the ones for the book and, picking the brain of people that worked there for, 30 years. It's, it's something you can't put a price on. And so even if the journey didn't come to the successful conclusion, thankfully it did, it's still worth taking.
Oh, that the journey is really what it's all about. And, that's one of the things I started to talk about was like people are like, oh, I'm glad all this stuff that you're doing with Dream is paying off, and it's like,
yeah.
What do you mean starting to pay off? Like, it's been paying off since day one. I mean, the goal was to be more of myself and not have to be in the corporate type world, right? So, and I was searching for a nicer word than the other two words, but in the corporate world. So, it's and getting to be creative and all that, and I think that you feel probably, I'm sure, the same way, where it's like I work to work more, like I work to put more work out, get more creativity out, and that's one of the reasons that I love Evernote, because I put everything that I come up with in Evernote, and I don't always get to come back to it. And sometimes it's product ideas, sometimes it's business ideas, sometimes it's book ideas, sometimes it's podcast ideas, but it's all there. So if I have time and I'm looking for that next project, like where am I going, what path am I going to go down next? I already have something laid out, rather than trying to keep all of it up in my head and forgetting so much of it.
Yeah, no. And you never know, what deep down inside you actually want to do. I would never have guessed that I had any desire to go to Miami and throw parties for people with weird Disney themes and make drinks for them and stuff. But, it's one of those things that I couldn't have predicted that, but boy, there's nothing better than doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love bringing people together and throwing events. And I mean, that's why I started a podcast conference, which hopefully, if you're not doing anything in September, you can come on down.
I hope so. Yeah, I think last time it was the same weekend as a convention in Long Beach, California. But hopefully, it'll be clear this time. I'd love to. It sounds awesome. I know Steve Swanson was there, who's
and he'll be there again this year, September 9th and 10th. We're having a pre-party and a after party at a hotel this time instead of a school. So check your calendar.
I took Steve to so Steve Swanson's the host of the Muppet Cast, and I took him for his first ever visit to Sesame Place and walked him through. And I remember he was curious about it, and he's like, yeah, it's but it's mostly for kids though. You wouldn't go. I said, us two grown men, we will go there, and I will take you on every ride. We'll get our picture with Elmo, and we'll have a great time. And we ended up going with two other friends, so we had just a fantastic time. 4 grown men, and I told them, I said, let me see, I think I can get us press passes. So I did. So we felt a little less silly, but I'll tell you, I never feel silly having a good time.
Hey, I hear that, and I think that was like during the summer or springtime, wasn't it? Because I think I was trying to get him to come out here. I was like, oh, come on down. Like he's like, I got to get back and all that. But yeah, no, he was at last year. He did a great talk, and he'll be back this year. I just hung out with him down at Disney a little bit a couple weeks back, but
he is one of the smartest guys in podcasting. He's like, and he's not a person that lets you know it all the time. You know, it's like but he's not a person that's ostentatious or preachy or anything, but he's a brilliant mind. Great guy.
Yes, he is, and he's a previous guest as well to the Dreamers podcast. So anyway, before we wrap up and let everybody know how they can connect with you and get the book,
Sure.
because they really should, if they have a love of the Muppets or a love of Sesame Street or the love of Disney or theme parks in general, like, they should totally get this. And admittedly, I don't have the book yet. Hopefully by the time this comes out, you will have had a book signing that I could actually attend.
I know. They're always very far from you. I haven't had any. I want to do some near you because South Jersey, there's a lot of people that are, the people that go to Sesame Place are certainly in that area. So yeah, I want to do one down there.
Yeah, let's talk and see if we can make one happen. Because
I'm gonna, as soon as spring comes around, as soon as the park in this area, we get a lot of snow in the winter, so they close down.
It's snowing outside right now, actually.
But once the sun starts staying out and the weather warms up, I'll do a bunch more and get because I love telling people this story.
Well, I would love for you to share any last thought. Actually, you know what? Before we do the last thoughts,
sure.
There is one other thing I want you to bring up, because I want people to go and I don't know if you have them available elsewhere, but you share these on Facebook all the time, and I absolutely love them. Is all these random pictures of old things that happened.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If you go to you can go to my website for the link to my Facebook and my Twitter, which is GuyHutchinson.com. Otherwise, you could just go on Facebook. I think I'm Guy A. Hutchinson on Facebook, like the letter A for my middle initial, Anthony. But everything else, like Twitter, I'm just Guy Hutchinson. It's HUTCHINSON. And my big thing, I found that I did Twitter and Facebook for a while and wasn't able to figure out what to do with it. And eventually I found that my love of just weird old photos, nostalgic photos with no context is the thing that people wanted from me. And I was like, this is perfect because I like looking for weird old photos and people like seeing them. So yeah, if you go on there, almost every day, I'll throw up a few, just, a picture of, an opening of a Burger King in Iowa and, in mid 1986, or a picture of, the Harlem Globetrotters selling stereos, on television in the 1970s, or you never know. I mean, there's the world's largest pig. I love looking for old weird press photos and old advertisements. I just find all that stuff. I find there's so much. I'm a big nostalgia person, and I love that I kind of like the nostalgia, like ads. I think advertisements, I'm very nostalgic for old commercials and old print ads and stuff, because it's one of those things that they go away. Like old airline logos are fascinating to me because you saw them for so many years, and then the airline goes out of business and you don't see that logo anymore. Like, to me, that kind of stuff is, you see it instantly brings back memories. And even if you never, like an airline, if you never flew on it, it doesn't matter. It brings back memories of sitting on the couch at grandma's, and watching a TV show and that commercial coming up, and you can almost picture yourself, sitting there, eating like peanut butter and jelly or whatever, on the floor in front of the TV.
Oh yeah, definitely, and even growing up, in the late '80s and early and through the '90s, like there's lots of commercials and stuff like that. In fact, we had what's the name of that website that was all Nickelodeon, that was like airing old Nickelodeon stuff like through the late '80s and early '90s. I can't think. It was like Nick Reloaded or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, it got shut down. But they had all the old commercials baked into the shows.
The weird thing is, I'm nostalgic about things that were decades before I was born. I mean, it's just, there's something about the past that is so warm and fuzzy because it's already happened. Like the future can be scary. We don't know exactly what it is, but the past, even I was telling people a story about the blizzard of '96. And for the blizzard of '96, I was working on the radio. I was in my early 20s. I think I was 20 years old or 21 years old. And I was working on the radio, and it was a terrible, horrible weekend. And I was telling people about how I had to walk in the snow. Snow was up to my waist, and I held my bag over my head as I got to the station, which was a couple miles I had to walk. And I got to the station before you had a cell phone. So thank God I made it, in this, covered in snow, frozen. My bag was wet. And then I, had to stay there all weekend and just do this. I'd say, the school on Oak is closed, the bingo club is closed. You just read things that were closed. And essentially it was a blizzard. Everything was closed. There was nothing. So you were just reading the names of things that were closed. And it was a terrible, boring weekend. I was telling people about it, and I was like nostalgic and happy, like with these warm feelings about one of the most, trying, difficult weekends of my life. I was like, oh God, I remember that so fondly, because I feel like the past, it's already there. You can't, it's like it's already written. So it's, there's nothing to feel but positive about it.
Well, everything was better in the past.
Right.
The old
That's
days were
that's
always
how we
better.
all live. I mean, I remember when I was a kid hearing, my parents and grandparents do everything was better in the olden days. And I was like, you're nuts. Everything's better now. And now I look at, the years that they were saying that about the past. And I'm like, oh no, everything was great then, in 1992. That was the best time ever, and every year you can say that about. I mean, every year is somebody's nostalgia. And I've even found I found nostalgia for things that you would never like. I love VHS cassettes now. And if you asked me 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh my God, they're the worst things ever. Thank God we got rid of them. And now I'm like, God, you look at them, they're so square and rectangular, and they've got the artwork and I like how they slide out, and look at how cool these things are. But I love nostalgia. That's so, yeah, people follow me, add me as a friend on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. And there's, I'll constantly put stuff up, and you can go to my website, look at weird photos of me. And I don't know what else is on there. It's like it's one of those where it's like a little bio and then like weird headshots and links to everything.
You and lots of jackets and hats.
Yeah, always.
With the drink. Guy, is there any last thoughts you'd like to share, though?
That is about it. You can also, if you want to buy my book, I'd love people to buy it. My book is available at sesameplacebook.com. And you can buy the book anywhere else on the internet. But if you buy it from me, I include a park map, and I include an original token from the arcade gallery, the games gallery that had computer games in 1980. I got a bunch of these original tokens with Big Bird on the front, Sesame Place on the back, and this place is gone. They don't have that arcade anymore. They shut it down in 2001. And so I include one of them with every book, and I sign it and personalize it and all that stuff. So if you want to buy it from me, you can get it at sesameplacebook.com. If not, check your local library. If you can check it out for free, go for it. And if you have any questions about that park, really, if you have a memory that you're like, hey, I remember this one thing, what was it? Let me know, and I'll tell you. I'm out there all the time on Twitter at Guy Hutchinson, and on Facebook and everything else, and drunkondisney.com if you want to check that out. If you like Disney, even if you don't like drinking, the drunk in the title refers to how we were drunk on Disney. We love Disney before we ever tried alcohol.
Not to be confused with drunk at Disney.
Yeah, there's, what I got to say, there is after we start Drunk on Disney, there's a Drunk at Disney on Twitter. He's a real sweet guy. He comes out. There's two guys that do a podcast called Drunk Disney. There's a series of videos that are called Drunk Disney, where they watch Disney stuff. But we were the original drunks. So all of these other drunks have followed in our drunken footsteps that zigzag everywhere. And I'm happy that they're all out there.
Well, it does help the community as a whole, and podcasting as a whole could finally, maybe someday, crawl out of its 20% penetration in the market in the grand scheme of things. So we're all working hard for that. Guy, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I really hope that people go check out the book and get nostalgic. And there's a lot to a lot to see, and I'm hoping that since we live in each other's backyard, we'll be able to hang out, and I'll get the book, and maybe we'll even go to Sesame Place together sometime.
Oh my God! If you want to go, you call me up. I will take you. I will give you the best tour you could ever have. I'll show you where everything was.
Maybe we'll go this summer, man, because we'll have the baby. We'll have a great excuse to go take pictures.
Yeah. Well, you'll have a little baby, and I'll have like my kid will be 5, and he'll be running as fast as he can to the roller coaster. But we'll meet somewhere in the middle. You'll have a great time.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you again, Guy, and I would love to have you on again at some point in the future to follow up on everything that you have going on.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Dreamers Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Dreamers Podcast. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/dreamerspodcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Dreamers Podcast, please send an email to j@jpar.co. This podcast is copyright 2014 by jpar.co.